Hello everyone, this is Professor Massey. I want to provide you with some guidance on how to figure out exactly what is required for every assignment, every discussion question, every journal entry, every final project for every class that you take at Southern New Hampshire University, including this one that you're in with me. comm655, and that is to go to the guidelines and rubric document for the corresponding assignment. And what you see before you here then is the comm655 analytical paper number 1, guidelines and rubric. At the time of this recording, none of you has submitted that assignment yet. Hopefully you'll have a chance before you do submit. It's due on Sunday night. You'll have a chance then to take a look at this video. I hope that you do. So let's take a look at this document. I'm hoping that you've seen this document type before. You've looked at guidelines and rubric documents before, so this hopefully looks familiar to you. The guidelines for submission are, this first part is almost always the same, and that is that it must be in fact in APA style. Double spacing, 12-point Times New Roman font, 1-inch margins, and citations in APA format. All of those things are APA format. Page length requirements for this assignment are 2 to 3 pages. And please take note that if you write outside of these requirements, whatever the page length requirements are, in this case 2 to 3 pages. If you write less than 2, if you write 1 3/4 of a page, it's probably going to be adequate. But if you write like 1 page, you're probably going to see a lot of needs improvement scores, because that means that you didn't take advantage of the space that you were given to elaborate on and explain and develop your argument. At the top end, 3 pages. If you write beyond 3 pages, I will then manually deduct points from your assignment. And why would I do that? I do that to be fair to everyone. Think about this first critical element. Provides an in-depth analysis of the importance of ethics with regard to brand identity. Well, if a person stays within the 2 to 3 pages and gets an exemplary score, providing an in-depth analysis in this first one, then you or another student writes 5 pages and provides an in-depth analysis. It was easier for the person who wrote 5 pages to provide an in-depth analysis than it was for the person who stayed within the limits and wrote only up to 3 pages and provided an in-depth analysis. So if you write beyond the page limit, I will manually deduct points, because it is not fair to the people who follow the rules, let's say. A minimum of 3 resources or references should be used to support your ideas. This section is always here, instructor feedback. This activity uses an integrated rubric. If you want to learn more about the integrated rubric, click there. But let's take a look at this rubric itself now. So here you have critical elements in this column, and these columns are the categories of grades. Exemplary is 100%, proficient is 90%, needs improvement is 70%, not evident is 0%. The value, this is 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, adding up to 100%, of course. So down at the bottom, starting here, writing and mechanics. This is always included in every rubric. And I consider these that precede it, these critical elements, or you could say required elements, these that precede it, the four that precede it in this case: ethics and brand identity, reputation management and PR planning, organization and brand integration, and resources. These are what I call content elements. This is not content. This is the presentation element. Okay, this is errors related to the internal structure or organization of your writing, grammar and spelling, writing style, APA style. Okay, so this is the how it looks and how it's presented, which is 20% of the grade in this particular assignment. Let's take a look at these four content critical or required elements, and how to define them. What does this mean? Ethics and brand identity. Well, the way that you determine that is to come over here. Usually proficient is the best one. In this particular rubric, it doesn't really matter. Oftentimes, the reason I say that is that oftentimes in the exemplary column, it'll say do everything that you're supposed to do in proficient and provide one more resource, for example. But this one actually has the key element repeated in every one of them, so it doesn't really matter. If it says something like that in the exemplary column in some rubric that you're looking at, if it says it does everything you're supposed to do in proficient plus something else, then go to proficient. Proficient, I have found in past classes that I've taught, is usually the best place to find the definition of what does this critical element mean, what are we supposed to be doing. But again, it's the same in the same kernel, if you will, is in all of them. So what is ethics and brand identity? An in-depth analysis or an analysis of the importance of ethics with regard to brand identity. Reputation management and PR planning, analysis of the importance of ethical practices in reputation management and public relations planning. Organization and brand integration, incorporates examples of organizations and brands effectively that reflect depth and breadth of research on a commitment to ethical practices, open communication, and corporate responsibility. Resources incorporates more than 3 scholarly resources effectively that support ideas regarding ethics and brand identity. And what that means is that you've got scholarly, and that's an important part of this, scholarly references or resources that support your argument. Okay? And the categories on writing and mechanics: no errors, minor errors, some errors, major errors. So we've got exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, not evident. And this first one provides an in-depth analysis. Proficient provides a mostly in-depth analysis. Needs improvement attempts to provide an analysis, and not evident does not provide an analysis. Okay, so that is basically how you do it. You look at the guidelines for submission, and you look at each of these critical elements, and you see what is the requirement, and taking one simple one for to use as an example. So as I said, these are scholarly resources that you have to get. BillyBobsCSR.com is not a scholarly resource, of course, but moving from the comical to the real, Forbes.com is also, although a respected resource, let's say, it is not a scholarly, I was going to say an academic, it's not a scholarly or academic resource. Forbes is popular press. as is time, as are a lot of resources that have credibility. It doesn't mean that something that has credibility, it means scholarly. The United States government is oftentimes not scholarly. Okay, so if it is a U.S. government Census Bureau, for example, that's a good reference, but it doesn't meet the scholarly resources criterion. And what scholarly really means, what it boils down to, is journal articles and books sometimes, but really you shouldn't use them very much. Master's theses and doctoral dissertations. So, in the main, what we're talking about here with scholarly resources are peer reviewed journal articles and academic books. Okay, I understand the importance of these rubrics. In fact, I would never, if I were a grad student at Southern New Hampshire University, I would never submit an assignment, discussion, question, response, journal entry, final project. I wouldn't submit anything that was to be graded without looking at the rubric, the guidelines and rubric document for that particular assignment or discussion. So, knowing that, I always include links to the corresponding rubrics in my weekly announcement. So, this is the week 3 weekly announcement. I hope that you are spending 10 minutes, 15 minutes a week taking a look at this, reading through it. I provide an overview. This week, of course, we're talking about CSR, or corporate social responsibility. I provide an overview, some definitional issues. I include videos, one there on corporate scandals, one on CSR itself. What is CSR? Hopefully, providing a multimedia experience for you. Some people are textual, some people are visually oriented, and sometimes these things, the visual elements, will help you understand something that maybe you can't understand as well if it's in text only. In every weekly assignment, I include a deliverables section. This week, week 3, we have a discussion question, a journal entry, and an assignment. And you'll see the same language in every graded item, every deliverable. Here is the rubric that you should use as a guide, since I will use this same rubric when evaluating your work. Here is the rubric you should use as a guide, since I will use this same rubric to evaluate your work. We have been talking about and went through the rubric for the analytical paper, The Role of Ethics in Brand Identity. Here is the rubric that you should use as a guide, since I will use the same rubric when evaluating your work. Click on that. It is a PDF file, and there it is. Okay, the same one that I've been walking you through. I have it downloaded to my computer, and I opened it in Acrobat. But you can open it this way. It's quicker and easier for you. You don't have to download it. I would recommend that you download it, but you don't have to. Okay, and it's the same one that we've been talking about. Now let's look at the actual rubric that I use and every faculty member must use to evaluate learner work. We don't have a choice. We are required to use these. But even if I weren't required to use the rubric, I would use them anyway, because I love rubrics. Rubrics have came around 10 years ago. They've been around for a while longer, but especially in the last 5 to 10 years, rubrics have become widely popular, and you could say wildly popular, in academia, specifically higher education. And that's because they're really good. They're a contract between you, the student, me, the instructor, and the university. It tells me as the instructor what is expected. It tells you as the student what is expected, and there's nothing that is hidden. It's transparency. It is direct. It's straightforward. It tells you exactly what is expected. If you do the expected work, then you'll get the grade for the work that you submit. Okay, so this is the actual one. And let me show you real quickly how it'll work. I already have exemplary already highlighted, and what I'm showing here is that faculty have an opportunity just to simply check this, and it highlights or selects everything in that column. I rarely use these. If I am going to use these, I'll use it for exemplary because the paper was just outstanding, or for not evident, they didn't submit the work. If you don't submit the work, it's not evident. Okay. But in the main, most often, I'm going to go back and forth. I'm not going to go just strictly down the column. So let's say that ethics and brand identity, yes, you provided an in-depth analysis. Good job. But on the reputation management and PR planning, you mostly in-depth, could have been a little bit better. Organization, you used great examples of organizations and brands. That was a good job. On this one, you only incorporated 3 scholarly resources and therefore were proficient in that one, and you had a few minor errors. Okay, now what happens is that the rubric automatically, this is the integrated rubric that we use, it automatically then generates, or as they say in IT, populates. The score automatically populates. And this ends up being 70.5 out of 75. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is that there's no timeliness. There is on the discussion rubric, there is a timeliness category. Or critical element. Let me show you what I'm talking about on the discussion rubric. And by the way, this discussion rubric is the same one. It's been the same one for every graduate course that I have taught in the last 2 years working at Southern New Hampshire University. But it's still good for you to take a look at what the rubric is. Sometimes the discussion is actually a peer review, and that uses a different rubric. Make sure you understand every rubric that is being used, all the critical elements that are being used. Okay, they are generally, let's say, generic. Comprehension, engagement, timeliness, critical thinking, writing, and mechanics. I told you that's in every one of them. They're typically generic so that they can fit to every discussion question, so they're not going to be specific about what you were instructed to do. When we go here, research and select a national or global organization that is displayed, etc., etc. You don't see that in the discussion question rubric. It's generic and used across a lot of different classes, okay? But still, understand what it is that you're supposed to do, what the critical elements are. One of the critical elements, and why I mention this, is timeliness. Submits initial post on time, 1 day late, 2 or more days late. Okay? So if you submit your assignment on Sunday and it was due on Thursday, as all discussion initial posts are, if you submit it on Friday, you're going to get needs improvement. If you submit it on Saturday or Sunday, you're going to get 0 points on that particular timeliness critical element. Now, notice then that there is not a timeliness critical element here. So how do I or other faculty members, I don't know how other faculty members do it, but how I deal with that. As stated in the late policy that's posted in the course room before the class even begins, the late penalty is 10% per week. Okay? So 10% of 75 points is 7.5 points. So if you submit your assignment this week that is due on Sunday, if you submit it on, or let's say 1 day late to 7 days late, so within that week, that 1 week, you will lose 10% of the grade. 2 weeks late, 15 points, etc. Okay, so that's how that is managed, and that's also how I'll manage it if you write over. This is a 3-page document, and you write 5 pages, I might deduct 10 points. It depends on how many pages or how much you have exceeded the page limit. That will determine how many points will be deducted. So be sure, please, and stay within those page limit requirements. And again, that should answer all of the questions that you have. You should be able to use this same approach for every discussion question, every journal entry, every written assignment, the final project in this course with me, and with every other class that you take. Always go to the discussion and guidelines and rubric document, not the discussion guidelines and rubric document, but the guidelines and rubric document for every graded work that you submit. There is always a corresponding rubric. I always attach, or let's say embed, in this case, a link to those corresponding rubrics. Some instructors probably don't do that, so you'll need to find it on your own, and you can do that by going into the course resources, going in. Our views are a little bit different as instructors and students, but you do have learning modules, and you can click on learning modules and then go to whatever week that you want to go to, and it'll find what you need. So please let me know if you have any questions about any of this by posting a question in general questions or emailing me at my Southern New Hampshire University email address. And thank you for your time, and I will see you in cyberspace.